6.5%, was it? Is that what the current odds are of the Stanley Cup?
Well, and if you look at the round-by-round progression, the Stanley Cup favorite is the Vancouver Canucks.
Like, what a time to be alive!
Talking you through every goalie controversy, scoring slump, and draft lottery bust, this is the C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com. Here they are, the best starting lineup we could afford under the salary cap. Chris, Matt, Anna, and Adam.
Welcome to another episode of the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Anna and Chris. I'm Chris, she's Anna, and we're actually recording an episode this week, and hopefully we'll publish it. I should qualify that. We attempted to record an episode last week, and we were about 2/3 through before we got into the F word. Anna, she burst into flames. Like, we're talking about, like, you know, full on fire, and she incinerated what was around her. The heat generated caused glass to shatter, water poured all over her laptop.
Yeah, something like that. Or I'm incredibly clumsy. Put my glass of water on the other side of my desk than I'm used to. And yeah, threw it on my laptop. And it was pretty unfortunate, but sort of 10 minutes after it happened, I thought I'd gotten the majority of the moisture out, which in hindsight was kind of dumb, naive. But we tried to record again. It sort of worked for a few minutes and then didn't work again. We tried one more time and then it was just like, no.
It was progressively getting worse. And there was a small part of me that was like, okay, I think at this point we're just going to call it. I don't care if we could possibly get it done, just because the amount of work I would have had to have done in post-production to line it all up. I don't know if I would have had the time to get it done. We then had planned to record on the Monday, and when Monday rolls around, I believe the technical term that you used for your laptop was buggered.
Yeah. Yep, so that'll be it. So I was basically told by technicians that it was beyond repair. So it working for a small amount of time was more fluke than anything else. So yeah, I'm on a loaner laptop right now, and unfortunately that was a very expensive, clumsy mistake by me, but we're sort of back on track. I should be getting a new laptop in the next few days.
Yeah. Well, if you want to help and pay for Anna's new laptop, you can go to support.c4podcast.com, which we should probably rebrand from Buy Me a Coffee to Buy Anna a Computer.
Yeah. Every little helps, as my compatriots at Tesco say.
Yeah. Well, the thing that you missed was us talking about the All-Star game, the Vancouver Canucks obviously having a pretty solid presence. You missed us talking about the fact that Kuzmenko no longer a Canuck. Elias, is it Elias or Elias?
Elias. So it's
Elias Lindholm.
Yeah, and Elias
Pettersson and Elias Lindholm. Elias Lindholm, now Vancouver Canuck.
Practice
and
makes
he
perfect.
made a pretty solid debut, which we'll be able to get into within this week's episode. Canucks are out on the road. I mean, if you had heard us talking about this week we had covered it, we would have told you that the Vancouver Canucks road trip was going to sort of probably be where it is right now. Like, the number of points that the Canucks have acquired, I want to say matches up to what we had actually proposed.
I mean, yeah, there's no proof of it
but
that's lost to the ether. But yeah, I think this is pretty accurate to where we thought they'd be, and we thought we may be being a bit conservative, but caution is in our nature.
We are professional podcasters. This isn't the longest running Best Making Over Canucks podcast for a reason, Anna. It's because we know what we're talking about. So we'll get into what's been going on there. They do eventually get to come home. And then we're going to talk a little bit about, what's been going on with the Vancouver Canucks and what that means sort of as they proceed into the trade deadline, into the end of the season. And if there is actually depth available in Abbotsford to rely upon if the Vancouver Canucks, one, need to, or two, have a deadline that doesn't allow for them the flexibility that they might like. The other thing that we won't be talking about is the Super Bowl. I just finished watching it and then ran downstairs to record a show. The script, which apparently had been leaked to political insiders in the United States, has somewhat come true.
Did you see the tweet? This is my only engagement with the Super Bowl. I've just been intermittently checking Twitter to see updates because I wasn't going to watch. But there was a tweet from the office of President Biden.
Yes, with Dark Brandon, was it the script?
As it was written or whatever. Yeah.
But you know what that
it's the
his
Fox
team is implying,
News
right?
conspiracy that it's a plot by the liberal media to get the president. Yeah. Who knows? Yeah, this from it's just utterly bizarre, the whole thing. I thought hockey was weird, but once you get a really popular sport and a really popular singer and just intersect those two worlds, chaos, madness.
Yeah. But if there is one thing that I can complain about when it comes to the Super Bowl is Canadian simultaneous substitution. For listeners who don't know it, Canadian SimSub is that a Canadian network who carries the rights to content that's also available off of a U.S. network or U.S. channel has the right to create what's called simultaneous substitution, essentially replace the U.S. feed with their feed. So CTV, they hold the rights to the Super Bowl in Canada, and so they go and they place their feed over top of the U.S. feed, whichever U.S. network carries it at the time, whether it be CBS, Fox, ABC, or NBC. I actually don't know who's in the mix right now for the U.S. networks. It's one of the three of the four. Now, not a big deal in normal cases, but Super Bowl is the commercials. So we get very few of the, U.S. commercials that you would actually tune in to watch.
Right.
And two, because I would imagine CTV's looking to make some good money, knowing that they're going to have all these eyeballs, they're charging probably a significantly higher amount to all of the Canadian companies that might wish to buy ads, and they in turn maybe aren't as willing to spend as some of the US brands are. Long story short, if you're a big fan of Crave, then Bell owned, CTV owned, whatever subscription service, you got to see the same Crave ad over and over and over and over and over and over and over.
Yeah, yikes. That sounds,
Only time of year I'd watch commercial Super Bowl.
Yeah. I guess you'll have to check them out on YouTube, but it's not as fun. I agree.
But the problem is then with YouTube, you have to watch ads to see ads.
Yeah, it's so true. It's very funny actually going on YouTube to look for an ad. But I presume you caught Usher's halftime show, and
I did.
What did you think?
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, but again, that music and Usher as an artist is sort of from, my era, my generation.
Yeah. I went and looked up the one when they had Eminem, Dr. Dre.
Also my generation.
Yeah, exactly. I looked up that show because I wasn't going to watch the Super Bowl, and loved it so much. But Usher, sure, it's okay, but it's not necessarily something I'd go out my way for.
Yeah, and I thought it was okay. I enjoyed it. I know there's people oh, it wasn't any good. And then they'll drop, I'm comparing it to the Prince halftime show. Oh my God.
Right. It's not upper echelon, but it was decent.
Right. But it's for me, I don't think anyone is saying Usher is at the same level Prince was. Right. There's different sort of places that these artists get to. Maybe Usher will eventually get to that point. I don't think he's necessarily there, and he is very talented. But regardless, I enjoyed it. And that's what's most important, Anna. What Chris enjoys. Sure. What else do I enjoy? Talking about the Vancouver Canucks. So the Vancouver Canucks kicked off their road trip by finding their way to Carolina, where they needed to take on the Hurricanes. When we were chatting in the episode that didn't make it to air, we had said that this game was either going to be indicative of the Vancouver Canucks maintaining the momentum they had going into the All-Star break, or potentially starting off slow because of, one, the break, and two, that the quarter of the team was in Toronto for All-Star festivities. Vancouver Canucks won 3-2. The thing about this game, however, is that it's not like the Vancouver Canucks were dominant or quite frankly, in a position where it's like, oh yeah, they're keeping the mo on their side.
Yeah, it didn't feel like, oh, they're showing the haters after the All-Star break that they still got it. But, like, sometimes that can be what's like, impressive, right? It can just be like, okay, they won an ugly game. Like, that's honestly still impressive to me.
Yeah, and how ugly was it? Well, the first goal that was given up is a shorthanded goal. The Vancouver Canucks, having gone so long in the season, having not given up a shorthanded goal, seem to have come to this realization themselves and feel it is unfair to not be as, nice as other teams around them and are starting to give them up. 2, the Vancouver Canucks did require special teams play to get themselves goals, which that's what you would like to see. And credit to Lindholm, who knows his role on the power play is to go to the front of the net and make sure his stick hits the puck.
Which, that's an underrated skill. So he does seem to slot right in, and you would think that power play systems are maybe even, I don't know if, I was going to say harder to learn than, but maybe not. Maybe it's easier because they have the set roles. But it is a lot more about timing, and precision.
Well, and, come to think of it, if let's say Kuzmenko was on the first unit power play when he was dressed, his role was not to stand in front of the net.
No.
Who was that? That was JT, right?
Yeah.
Which to me, that doesn't seem like the role you want JT Miller to play. Like I would prefer to see him on the half board, similar to where we would see Besser. The fact that Lindholm can go and occupy the front of the net, actually, I feel provides better value. And it's not knocking Kuzmenko. It's just, I feel JT is a better version of what Kuzmenko would have been. And Kuzmenko is not the guy that you're going to put in front of the net. Yeah,
it gets more value out of JT as well as providing a scoring option through Lindholm.
Yeah. The other area that the Vancouver Canucks have seemingly decided isn't as important is the penalty kill. First half of the season, penalty kill was pretty good. Got them to where they needed to go. As the season is getting longer in tooth, the Vancouver Canucks are of the opinion, if we let them in, we know we can come back, which they have been doing kind of still, right?
Yeah, it's just a dangerous game to play because, one, we've seen non-special team scoring take a little bit of a hit, and then 2, it's like, what happens when scoring dries up? Like, are the, always solid Vancouver Canucks defense going to get to work? Like, that's a lot to ask, especially if Demko isn't having, his best performance.
Yeah. Regardless, though, they did get the 3-2 win. JT Miller scoring an even strength goal early in the third period, and the Vancouver Canucks then held on. I don't know how to describe it as any other way than holding on, but a dub is a dub is a dub. So that sets them up for a game. I don't know, what is it, 17 now?
Of the series,
against the Boston Bruins, or I don't know. I like how they had asked Connor Garland about the Bruins, and Connor had been, I don't know, I can't remember if the response was that he was in the rink to watch Game 8.
No, he was meant to go to Game 8, and he didn't, and he said he stopped being a Bruins fan when they didn't draft him. I was just like, obviously it makes sense that you stop being a fan of any particular team when you're drafted, but the way he said it, it's like, no, screw them, they didn't draft me, so, but yeah, even, he's smart enough to know, yes, this matters. Sometimes hockey players are really dumb about rivalries, and it's nice to see someone pay attention even a little bit to them.
Okay, you hear that Demko apologized to Swayman for not giving him a hug?
Yeah, damn, that's so Demko. Lame. But, who I actually...
I mean, in fairness, it's probably true. He was probably in the zone, completely missed it, and came up and apologized. But I feel that Thatcher needs to understand that what he did ingratiated him to all Vancouver Canucks fans just that little bit more.
Right. And who I actually blame here, because, sure, Thatcher a little bit, but, mainly the media. It's just, you don't have to have an answer for everything. That moment, I think from the Canucks point of view, it's obviously really funny. but I never wanted anyone to ask Demko or Swayman about it. And, like, even from the Boston point of view, you could have just left it alone. Just be a moment in time. We don't have to solve every mystery, you know?
Fair play. So, game gets underway. The line we all love gets out on the ice, generates a power play. Early in the game, we're not I want to say that was like within like the first 20 seconds was the Vancouver Canucks power play, right?
Yeah.
And hey, they showed that they can produce results just a couple of nights before. The problem is they also showed that they could allow another team to get results on the power play. And 12 seconds after the penalty was called, or whatever it was, Brad Marchand, everyone's favorite Boston Bruin, scores a shorthanded goal on a bad Vancouver Canucks mistake.
Yeah.
The hockey gods hate us, Anna.
So I was still at work, kind of running up and down a building at this point when, so I only really watched the second period of this whilst I was on a bus. But, yeah. It was a bad start, and it got worse from there. It just felt like the Canucks were completely deflated by that start, and just they didn't really generate anything. They were scoring chances, but like to say they were good scoring chances, I think would be a generous reading of the game.
Yeah, and I agree. The Canucks, though, despite having good opportunities, continued to go and do what they could to ensure that the game was getting away from them quick, right? Because you get that Marchand goal and you somewhat recover from it, only to then get another, late power play and proceed to give the Bruins a second goal on or second shorthanded goal. And I think at this point, the wind is out of the sails. 2 shorthanded goals given up in one period. You're down 2-0 going into the intermission.
But you're right, but that can't happen. Like, we'll go into the games of the weekend, but you can have a bad period. You can't let that bad period define your game. And it did feel like the Canucks did allow that to happen. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not going to sit here and say Boston, Vancouver Canucks lost the game, Boston didn't win it. Like, it was a 4-0 game. Like, Boston were obviously decent. But it wasn't like the dominant performance from Boston that kind of signifies. It's more just a flat performance from Vancouver.
Well, I don't even know if you could call it a flat performance, considering they come out of the second or the first intermission of the second period and give up a third goal. Like, you've just probably been read the riot act by your head coach, right? Like, that's definitely
that's happened. We know
modus operandi. Yeah, like and your response is like, oh man, we better go and either prove our coach that we're still in it, or alternatively, he thinks he's pissed off now.
Yeah. How about we give up 2 goals in a minute?
Well, okay, Anna, you took a little wind out of my sail there. Sorry. Because, the 34-second goal really pissed your coach off, but how you kick that up a notch? Yeah, 2 goals in less than a minute. 15 seconds later, Pavel Zacha scores. What's interesting, Thatcher stays in the net.
Yeah,
I'm not faulting Thatcher necessarily, but there are very few tools available to a team or a coach to utilize over the course of a game. And it's not to suggest that Vancouver is outright done at this point, when in fact they are. But do you not consider okay, I'm going to pull my starter and give him some more rest because this one's out of hand, and off you go. But yeah, Thatcher stays in for the full game. Vancouver Canucks don't give up any more goals. But I think both the Bruins were happy with the lead and the Canucks were looking ahead to the weekend.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm torn on this one because I do think hockey's like any sport, but any elite sport is so much mental game, and Thatcher's definitely that stubborn goalie that wants to turn the performance around, and fair play, he didn't give up any more goals, but like you say, that's a tool. Pulling your goalie is a tool to use to motivate your team's performance. And sometimes it's not about you as a goalie, and you just have to see if there's a route back into this that involves your team playing better in front of a new guy.
Yeah, and to put things into further perspective, had the Canucks checked out of this game by then? Totally. The remainder of the second period, they actually did get more shots than they did in the first. The Canucks had, 3 power plays in the first? They got 4 shots the entire period. 9 shots in the second, but then they got 4 shots in the third. Not good. Also, not necessarily a good sign, though I do feel that some people are liking this style of play. You had Nikita Zorov getting himself into the sin bin a couple times in the third period with some not over-the-top play, but maybe some overzealous, I don't know,
antics.
Yeah, antics, right?
Sure.
Well, the point being is, it's that thing that people like to see, the grit and sandpaper. But
right.
This might be indicative of something that may be happening over the course of the weekend.
Yeah, he's definitely a player that plays on the edge, and that's the kind of danger with those kind of players, right? As we'll see in the next game.
So let's talk about that edge. So the Vancouver Canucks find themselves in the Motor City for a nice early Saturday morning game. I missed it. My daughter had skating lessons, and then we had reservations to go for brunch afterwards. So ultimately, I was sort of paying attention to C4 Discord and the bot we have that runs provides an update. And I take a look, and I'm like, the Vancouver Canucks, they've got this one. Right? This is, to me, that the Canucks are going to win. So color me surprised when I see that the Vancouver Canucks lost in overtime 4-3. This blows my mind. They completely dominated the Red Wings in the second period. Well, for those of you who watched the game, you know that the Vancouver Canucks, not to be outdone in Boston, decided that let's give up another goal a minute into the period just to, show that we're consistent. Raymond getting the Red Wings up 1 buzz, 45 seconds into the first period.
Yep. Sensing a theme.
Again, it's not that the Canucks can't come back, but I would like it if once in a while they decided that wasn't the way to go about creating exciting hockey in the NHL. But unlike the first intermission conversation that Tocchet had in Boston, this conversation worked in Detroit because the second period Vancouver Canucks came out on fire. Höglander, Hronek, and Pettersson all scoring goals, putting the Canucks up 3-1. And, to put things into perspective, the Vancouver Canucks didn't look outclassed in the first period per se, but based on what I've heard, read, and seen a little bit of, Detroit certainly did in the second.
Yeah, for sure. I think a good way to put it is in the first period, I did say that Canucks were playing like someone described scoring to them once in a loud bar. So it's like they knew what scoring was, they just weren't quite sure how to do it. And there was a huge step up in the second period for sure. Maybe they watched the little featurette they had for Chinese New Year of Boomy, the bear cartoon panda. Not sure. But maybe they watched that and they were motivated by it. Because they're thinking if a cartoon cat can play hockey, surely we can. So, it was a huge step up. And just that, line with Höglander and Pettersson playing together and some third wheel guy called Pierre Suda. It's just so fun to see it. It's so fun to watch them playing together.
It certainly is. Third period. The Vancouver Canucks, I feel, were guilty of not actively looking ahead to Sunday, but maybe passively. They got opportunities, but their mistakes ultimately were what cost them. Power play marker to start off the third period, and then only 5 or so minutes later, Rasmussen scores to tie that game up in the third period. And then from that point on, Vancouver did look like they were interested in not going beyond 3, but had no opportunity or no real opportunity to make that a reality. So we get to go for overtime. And in overtime, if you happen to take a little too long to hit the can, you probably missed out on the fact that Detroit had scored a goal on an overtime penalty shot, a very rare occurrence, considering that usually when there is a breakaway in overtime, it's like 3-0. But Quinn Hughes is called for tripping, and then Jake Wallman goes in and scores the overtime marker. Gets the Detroit Red Wings the 2 points. Vancouver only gets the loser.
Yeah. I mean, anyone that was saying it was not a penalty shot, it's just, people being too used to penalty shots not being called, especially in overtime. I mean, as you say, the circumstances rarely line up for it, but, penalty shots just, don't get called anywhere near enough for the amount of times they should be. What is a scoring opportunity that has been taken away? So I didn't mind it, but yeah, you don't mind seeing a chippy game from a team that is winning, but when they allowed their lack of discipline to, give the Detroit way back into the game, that's when you're just thinking it looks messy.
Here, I'm curious, Anna, so I'm just going to go off the rails here. Penalty shots in hockey. Are you of the opinion that the penalty shot is appropriate use of a call, or would you be of the mindset that a team should choose whether they accept the penalty shot or take the 2-minute minder that would have been called had it not been a scoring opportunity?
No, I like penalty shots. I think they should be called more than they are, but not a lot.
Well, no, but that's the reason that I asked this question is I think one of the reasons that you don't see the penalty shot called more frequently is that there are some teams that would use the fact the penalty shot is less likely to result in a goal than, let's say, a 2-minute power play might be.
Yeah, but
right. So,
and I can see that, but why have it? Either we completely get rid of it, and that's really just the most boring solution.
Well, I feel but that's the thing is I feel that the offending team, right now, the NHL officials are hesitant to call penalty shots because it is of their mind that the offending team is deliberately trying to stop play to generate the penalty shot, as opposed to the penalty potential of a power play. So if you are going to award a penalty shot, and I'm perfectly fine if you want to award more penalty shots, but it should be that the team that was impeded or what have you has the choice. And they can elect to say, I'll take the penalty shot or I'll take the 2-minute power play.
I get what you're saying. I just think I don't think teams are doing that because penalty shots are called so rarely that I don't think teams are tactically doing it to enforce a penalty shot. And I think it's cool.
I'm not saying I like the penalty shot, but to me, I feel like NHL referees, if there's one thing that I think most people would agree upon, they themselves try to manage the game.
Right, but I do feel like we're focusing on the wrong problem here. The problem is referees not doing their job properly then.
Well, that's not going to ever change.
But then,
to me, the bigger problem is changing the thing is changing the referees.
Okay, yeah, I mean, maybe you're right, but to me, I'm that seems like a backwards way of solving it. And I like that it has to be the person taking the penalty shot. Yeah, you're right. Maybe that would solve it quicker, but I don't want to see that.
You're not wrong. Nothing you're saying is wrong, and I would wholeheartedly agree with you. But I have just accepted that the NHL is going to continue to NHL, and that NHL referees will continue to NHL referee. And therefore, I'm okay, well, considering I can't deal with those, is there anything else that I can introduce to try to get the results that I would like? More calls. Back on the rails, the Vancouver Canucks take that loser point and find themselves high stepping it into the capital of the United States, Washington, D.C. And, Vancouver thought that it would be kind of cool to take the hard route again. Because, why not? Moral victory. They do not give up a goal within the first minute of the period.
Yep. I mean, I still missed it because how long into the period what did they give up a goal, Chris?
108.
Yeah.
Nick Dowd, 108. Again, I didn't see a lot of this game. Super Bowl Sunday, daughter doing stuff, all that jazz. But what little I did see, it did seem like a game that the Vancouver Canucks and the Washington Capitals had accepted was a necessity. And the sooner that they could get it over and done with, they could sit down and watch the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, clearly that was their preference. But then narratively that didn't work out because, yeah, Canucks once again decided they were gonna do things the hard way and go to overtime.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, once again we saw Niels Honglander doing special, wonderful, fun things. And once again we saw Connor Garland doing maybe less aesthetically pleasing things. But, yeah, he's always just the hardest working guy out there. And he actually got rewarded with a goal in the first period there.
Yeah. And I actually failed to mention, because I took myself off the rails. I was so insistent on going off the rails. Zadorov, not available for the game in Washington. Why was that, Anna?
Yeah, I mean, he did, I was about to say perform a headshot. Committed a headshot. Anyway, he has been banned by player safety for 2 games for a shot to the head. I'm not mad at it. Like, I think you can say all you want that it was accidental, but he didn't take any precautions whatsoever to make it a safe play. And I'd rather those be punished more harshly because those have the biggest injury risk.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out not in this case. Raymond was fine, but yeah, that can be the scariest injuries really, so I don't mind seeing that punished.
Yeah, so having watched the replay, and I like this again. I know NHL Department of Player Safety is inconsistent as well. They play the wheel of justice far too often, but I do like that when they go and they talk about the suspension and they show the replay, they walk through. Here's what we saw, and this is why we're doing it. You know, Zadorov made contact with a player's head, and Zadorov was going for body. Players leaning forward. You could say, well, the player had his head down. Well, again, you and I have talked about this. A player with their head down is in a vulnerable position. That doesn't give you, Scott Stevens opening to go and end his career. Not suggesting Zadorov is going to do that.
Yeah. And, that's the thing. People if and but the whole thing. If Raymond had his head up, if he was taller, if Zadorov was shorter. And it's but they aren't. They have the bodies they have, and you've got to act accordingly. Zadorov is a bigger player. Sometimes he'll get penalized just for being a bigger player, and Tyler Myers is very familiar with that. But to me, it was a case of he is a taller, bigger player, so he needed to be more careful than he was being. It was reckless.
It was, and that's and there's so many different things about that hit. You have Zadorov going left to right, to a player going up and down. It's just, it's a bad hit. And, yes, the match penalty was assessed in the game. There's someone well, he got the game. Why does he get 2 more? Well, that's okay. I will give you an argument that the Department of Player Safety spins the wheel and they come up with the number. I'm not unhappy with the 2 games. To me, that if that was consistently applied or more.
Yeah, I think we have the responsibility to praise them when they get it right and not just point out, but they got it wrong tons of times before. Yes, and they will get it wrong again. But this time I'm fine with what happened.
Yeah. So anyhow, Zadorov was not available for the game against the Capitals, but matter not that did, because the Vancouver Canucks did eke out the 2 points in a 3-2 overtime winner. The fact remains, though, the Vancouver Canucks, if we were to go and look at their schedule, have found a way to get 5 points out of a possible 8. 5 out of 8 is a positive record. Yes. Okay. Loser point. But the thing to keep in mind is that the Vancouver Canucks were going out on the road after a long break. That's actually not a horrible result. And if I recall correctly, because again, I'm trying to think back to when we recorded, I believe you and I had said there was going to be a win and a loss with Boston and Carolina. Mm-hmm. I think you had said that they would get the W, then the L. I had said I'm worried about the first game, and if they lose that, they'll win in Boston. But I agreed it was going to be a win out of those two.
Yeah.
And then we talked about the Red Wings Capitals, and I think we both agreed they were going to take a loser point in one of those games, and they would get 2 points in the other. I think you have to give us that.
Yeah.
Because
and I
an
can't
overtime
remember
loss
which
or an overtime win.
way we predicted it. Yeah.
No, and I can't. But and not only that, the Capitals, if they give them a point, who cares? They matter very little to the Vancouver Canucks.
The East just do not count for anything.
But that sets the Vancouver Canucks to wrap up the road trip in Chicago, a team that continues to be rewarded by the league for such good hockey operations or whatever it is.
Just shining examples of what hockey should be and what organizations should be doing on and off the ice.
Yeah. We won't see future Vancouver Canuck Connor Bedard. He is still on the IR. After that game, the Vancouver Canucks come home to play 2 before getting on the road again. They take on the Detroit Red Wings on Thursday night and the Winnipeg Jets, who are pretty darn hot in their own right, on Saturday night for a little hockey night in Canada. Anna, what do you predict is going to happen this week?
So I'm going to the Red Wings game, so I'm going to predict a win there. I'm going to predict an ugly win in Chicago where Canucks make it look really difficult, just like they did in Vancouver. And then I'm going to predict I'm going to say a loss to the Jets.
Oh, Anna.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
Obviously, the Jets aren't as hot as they were, but I still... Yeah. But, what we have seen, I will say, what we have seen this week is Canucks don't get in ruts. They barely ever... they lost 2 in a row twice this year? Or maybe 3 times. Mm-hmm. And they have never lost 4 in a row. They keep getting points, even when they're not necessarily winning the game. So, resilient Canucks, right? So, even if I am predicting a Jets win, I don't think that's a massive deal. What about you?
So, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm giving the Vancouver Canucks 3 W's.
Nice.
It's a triple dub week in my books. And I'm honestly going to eat my words. I'm not feeling good about the triple dub, but I feel that the Vancouver Canucks will beat the Blackhawks. Again, this is a team who's bottom of, not bottom of the division. Actually, no, they are. The San Jose Sharks have 2 more points than they do. Bottom of the division, bottom of the conference. Dash 74 on the season. You don't lose to that team. I know the Vancouver Canucks like to prove that that's not always true, but they get the dub there. I don't feel that the Vancouver Canucks are going to lose at home to Detroit, especially how they technically were in control until they weren't in Detroit. And when Winnipeg comes to town, Hockey Night in Canada, I feel that the Vancouver Canucks will elevate their game. Yes, the Jets are a good team, but I think the Vancouver Canucks are better. And the only way that you can prove that is by beating those teams. So 3 dubs.
Nice. Okay, good. Look at you being super positive. I love it.
I know. It's so unusual and not what this podcast is about normally, but hey, maybe I've turned a new leaf. Or alternatively, next week I come to you and I tell you the sky is falling and how stupid was I. Regardless, I'm going to take a brief break, and maybe you should too. This is the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Anna and Chris.
Take hitting out of the game. You can't hit anymore, so don't do it.
The unsportsmanlike conduct, I want to get an explanation on that.
No kidding.
Because how do you get suspended for unsportsmanlike conduct?
Plus interference. There's no interference there. He had the puck.
Now, Madison never ever did that before. Now, why did he do it? Because he was mad.
Well, your early favorite for the Calder Trophy, that's for sure. Elias Pettersson, you might even say your early favorite for the Hart Trophy.
Just to get back to your question, Elias is going to play plenty. He didn't play. He's going to get a lot of power play time. And, yeah, I'm concerned about our offense. We lost 200-point players, and we've got to find a way to score.
I like how you put in the rundown here for half full, half empty. Will Canucks' ill discipline and defensive liabilities come back to bite them?
Yeah, I just had to check that I did spell that right, because the Mountain Times autocorrect wanted to change that to Isle.
We did put ill. I copied it.
Okay.
I would have probably called you out if it had said Isle.
Yeah. Like, once again, we kind of let our cynical minds get to work here, because, like, Canucks are still having a great season, on course to comfortably right into the playoffs, but we've seen this week especially where their game can fall apart, and that is in hanging their goalie out to dry. So basically losing coverage in front of the net, I think it would be fair to say, and yeah, taking dumb penalties. Or giving away a penalty shot, as it were.
Yeah, I agree. I think the other piece that I would add there is the fact that the Vancouver Canucks are getting far too casual when they do have control of the puck. So, you know, case in point, the shorthanded goals that we're seeing the Vancouver Canucks give up are quite often due to either lazy passes or really casual play, and it's almost like teams are picking up on this now and providing that added pressure while on the kill, and Vancouver is kind of folding at the first sign of pressure. Not something we had seen earlier in the season. The defensive lapses, I'm not entirely surprised it's occurring. I think everyone who was watching the Vancouver Canucks at the start of the season kept saying, wow, this defense is really holding up. This defense is doing what we didn't expect that they were going to do. Well, now they're sort of coming back to earth, and that's not a bad thing. It's just the reality that now we're starting to see what we had expected to see. That does obviously put more pressure on Thatcher or Case, depending on who happens to be in net. The discipline, however, that's the part that really irritates me. Earlier this season, you heard me go off about too many men calls, bench minors. Like, these are the penalties that you should not have.
Which seem to be coming
Canucks
back
had them
again.
in spades. And yes, that's the thing. Like, one of the, special teams goals they gave up, this past week was due to a too many men on the ice call. And I feel that, again, these types of penalties and the poor discipline that we're seeing from the Canucks are things that they themselves can control. So of those three things we've pointed out, two are well within the Vancouver Canucks' ability to deal with, and they don't seem yet to have figured out how to.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? That's like Rick Tockett's thing, is systems and discipline, and that has changed, like, completely turned the team around, is sticking to systems and being disciplined, and we're just seeing a little, cracks begin to form in that, because the too many men thing is infuriating. Like, obviously we make jokes all the time when it happens that Canucks cannot count. Obviously that's not what's happening. What's happening is, like, they're getting the timing wrong, the communication isn't there, or they panic. And, like, none of those should happen with a Rick Tocchet hockey team. They just shouldn't, like, and they shouldn't be happening, like, the lapses we were talking about, they definitely shouldn't be happening on set plays like a special team.
Yeah, that just drives me nuts. Those shorthanded goals that they've been giving up, I think of all the irritants, are the most.
Yeah.
Like, you are a team who's built right now to take advantage of teams while on the power play. This is very similar to what we saw the 2011 team do, the 2012 team do. And yet what you're seeing now is a version that can do that and provide that sort of, grit and sandpaper style play that people complained was devoid in 2011, 2012, though I would disagree. It just wasn't as prevalent. Giving up shorthanded goals there sucks. And not only that, it gives the team that you're playing so much more confidence that they can take advantage of you. So that confidence that they're manufacturing based on your mistakes allows them to then do even better, thus taking away that advantage you have. If this team does not remedy these issues, and I don't know how they fix defensive liabilities that they have, like their blue line has been acquitting itself above its pay grade
for sure.
As long as,
like,
right? But that's gonna degrade. And if, maybe we'll get into this in a moment. If there's ways to sort of fill those holes, maybe. But let's say that doesn't happen. You got to fix those other two areas.
Yeah, because, like, let's be honest, Noah Gilson is having the season of his life. We were, at the beginning of the season, saying, like, his rope has run out. Like, this guy needs to sit. He wasn't playing well. He didn't sit.
It's like a magician who keeps pulling the, rope out of the hat. You think it's almost done, and guess what? It just keeps coming.
I know. He didn't sit. Like, it was, Rick Tocchet can be ruthless, and no doubt he might have been very direct with Noah Gilson and ruthless in practice, and, but yeah, he didn't sit, and he has improved just, like, leaps and bounds. He's a crazy good, like, just really solid defensive player with some offensive acumen as well, picking out some really good passes. Mark Freeman came in today in place of Zadorov. Looked fine to good, I would say. Like, didn't look out of place there. Ian Cole, definitely providing that grit and, for the most part, like, solid. Tyler Myers is Tyler Myers. And
actually, to give Tyler Myers credit, he's actually been a better version of Tyler Myers this season than Tyler Myers of previous seasons.
I agree, but I would say we have seen the Tyler Myers goes walkabout, wants to be a forward, creep back in the last week or two.
Yeah, fair play.
So, and that does point towards, is this the point where you look at for a stay-at-home defenseman who's never gonna, like, lose his assignments? And who might that be? I don't know. Maybe it's a familiar face in Calgary. But no doubt that the defense core has actually played better than we thought. Obviously, the Zadorov addition as well. But, yeah. It's more just the case of when it gets to, like, deeper into the playoffs. Is there more than better than we thought? Like, do we need to have more assurance than that?
Yeah. The blue line, I think, and let's sort of talk about that as a segue into the next point we wanted to discuss here, Full of Empty. It's the priority come trade deadline. Whether that be Chris Tanev, who's currently playing his trade in the city of Calgary for the Flames on the final year of his deal there. The one that he signed in Calgary when the Vancouver Canucks had
ran out of time.
Forgot about him. Like, weirdest situation, but hey, whatever. I haven't moved on. I think that deal, if it can be done, would be good for the Vancouver Canucks in so much as they get a player who you can trust, who's reliable, and maybe you try to re-sign reasonable numbers to sort of provide you that foundation that you can lean on sort of in the twilight of his career. However, Vancouver is not in a good position as it pertains to the cap. Like right now in LTIR, they have just over $1 million available to them. The Tanev deal is a 4-something in the year, so I suspect while the Vancouver Canucks could technically fit him-ish with something going back to Calgary's way, they don't have a lot of wiggle room.
There's no salary cap in the playoffs, Chris.
No, but it's the salary cap you have to worry about to get him to that point, right? Are there any players that the Vancouver Canucks can LTIR until the end of the season, at which point they magically show up? Because I think that's how you win cups. Tampa Bay's written a book on it.
Yeah, that's a interesting point. I believe Carson Soucy's not on LTIR, right? So
yeah, well, so you throw him there, and he comes back on, for the first game of the playoffs. Let's say cap's not the issue to bring a tan of. What would the price of the Vancouver Canucks be that they'd have to pay to get him? Keep in mind that the Vancouver Canucks did take Kuzmenko, who was arguably one of their best, trade chips.
Yeah, for sure.
And have manufactured the Lindholm trade with it, amongst a few other pieces, including a pick. The Vancouver Canucks for 2024, they have a third as well as a fourth. They have 2 sixths and a seventh. Not the types of picks that usually help you get deals done. If we then look in 2025, they got a whole bunch of picks, say, for round 3, and 2026, same thing. Though in 2026, they're also without their seventh. There's some depth that Calgary might be interested in. But the thing about the Calgary Flames is they're in this sort of weird position right now where they aren't really out of it.
No, and that's the interesting thing, right? You, kind of want to be dealing with teams that are thinking sell the farm. Especially a player in an expiring contract, an older player in an expiring contract. I'm not just saying this, but I do think Calgary should maybe consider looking at next year. At this point, I mean, Canucks do have some. I was gonna say prospects. I don't know if he still counts as a prospect, but Podkolzin is still a good trade chip.
Okay, right, but this is the part with the Vancouver Canucks that I struggle with. When the Kuzmenko deal or Kuzmenko Lindholm deal happens and a first round pick goes along with it, I'm like, oh, you gave up a first. And the people are like, oh, Chris, it's more like a second because where the Canucks are going to probably find themselves at the end of the season. And I don't disagree. And again, if this is the type of deal that you make for an opportunity to go for the cup, you make it. Yeah, I agree. I'm all on board with that. But let's say, and I'm getting back to my cynical self here. You're a long time suffering Vancouver Canucks fan, and you've come to realize that nothing ever goes the Canucks' way. This might be a one and done window. So how are you going to fill those cupboards back up when you've emptied them and you've gotten rid of your means to fill them?
Well, I mean,
awfulizing.
Sure, a little bit, but if that's the case, isn't it just a case of this was a weak draft year anyway? That's why we look at next year. It's not so much the picks that hurt.
It's the prospects too. I feel like you've put Podkolzin, I think you're right. It is a trade chip. There's some doubt. There's probably some desirability amongst the NHL for a player like him. Yet he has gone to Abbotsford and is doing what has been asked of him from what I can understand.
Yes, I would say he's not exactly been the dominant force they wanted him to be down there, and obviously the head injury that he suffered, plus I believe suffered a different lower body injury. Anyway, that didn't help, but I'm not saying they made up their mind on Podkolzin. Obviously not. Look at a player like Niels Höglander, who, fell out with the previous regime. Clearly, they did not. He was not a Bruce Boudreau guy for sure, but he spent an entire season down in Abbotsford, or almost. Look at him go. But Yeah. I think this is probably a good way to segue into talking about Abbotsford in general.
Sure.
And I'll admit that it was a bit of a red herring in the rundown. Because, in my opinion, the answer to is there some depth in Abbotsford that can help Canucks down the stretch and into the playoffs? Nothing major that's going to be a difference maker. That's my assessment. And I wanted to say it because I believe it was as we were recording last week, but Arshdeep Baines, obviously he went to I believe it was actually on Monday, he went to the NHL All-star weekend. He was a day late because of weather in the Bay Area, so he missed the skills competition. But yeah, he was the AHL All-star MVP. He's quite a player, and I still believe that to be the case. Is he a difference maker in the NHL? Not right now. Christian Wolanin is arguably still the best defenseman in the AHL, although definitely not as I wouldn't say that as loudly as I would have done last year, but again, is he anything more than a serviceable insert into your bottom pairing? No.
Yeah, I, as everyone knows, don't really follow the Baby Canucks all that well. But based on what little I know, the Abbotsford Canucks are structured as the sort of futures team. There'll be a player like Arshdeep Baines. I don't feel you bring him up for a playoff run outside to be one of the aces sitting upstairs. Right?
Yeah, and he's
keeping him around the team.
Yeah, he's definitely one of those players that really could be a leading light, has that NHL leading light potential. Not for a while.
Yeah. The thing, though, is that the Abbotsford Canucks, as sort of, how they're performing, this is the struggle. You've got a team who's middle of the road in the AHL, but the AHL playoffs and the NHL playoffs happen at a very similar time. Do you start to accept that, we're going to have a bunch of these players come up to be the aces and quite literally sign the potential early departure for a team that might make it in, or?
Well, I'm speaking as someone that I love watching Abbotsford. I would say I haven't really done it too much in the last couple of weeks, but as much as I'd love to let them exist in a vacuum of their own team playing for their own community, they're not. They're a farm team for Vancouver, and I think with Rand Johnson being the player development head and their GM of Abbotsford, that's just so clear to me that the organization see it as a holistic, thing of whatever's best for the club, and they're certainly not going to have any qualms in making Vancouver the best it can be this year of all years. So yeah, sorry to the people of Abbotsford, but yeah, that's
Anna,
the reality of it.
You're no longer going to be welcomed.
Oh no.
Yeah. And please, if you're listening, well, there's another option. They don't bring up the aces until after the Abbey Canucks are done. That's probably the route as to which they would go. But if we're talking about the potential of making it in to an NHL playoff game, there are deadlines that are required to be met to allow for the player to be eligible. And in that particular case, that is more the quandary. But based on what Anna has said earlier, probably not something to worry about. I was actually just looking at Cap Friendly just to sort of, peruse the Vancouver Canucks, cap situation here. And lo and behold, they don't have too many blue liners signed beyond this season. The only, I guess 3, because Julesen's currently with the big club, so we have to count him as that. The only 3 that will be back next season are Quinn, Carson, and Noah. Mm-hmm. There is a 4th. There's actually a 4th and a 5th.
Yeah.
Tucker Pullman and Guillaume Brisebois.
But, yes. all respect in the world to him, but I don't see Tucker Pullman ever playing professional hockey ever again.
Yeah. So the Vancouver Canucks are in a position where they're going to have to go and repopulate that side of the pantry. If you look at what they have available in Abbotsford, as you had pointed out, is there a player down there that's going to crack the Canucks lineup? Maybe Wolanin does. I think Jolson's in a really good spot to make an argument, especially with a good camp, that he stays and starts to populate a depth role. But you had asked, who are the Vancouver Canucks top six right now? And I feel you have Hughes, Roenick, Zadorov, Susie when healthy, Cole, Myers.
Yes. I mean, to me, I was asking that question to go back onto the forward lines, but
top six up that.
That top six are just because of Nils Hoglander's recent entry, but worth having that conversation at both ends of the lineup, really. Yeah, because Carson Soucy, when healthy, it's not like he has a pattern of injury in terms of he is re-injuring or has a weakness that keeps happening, but he has been incredibly unlucky this season, so it's I think he's good when he's there, but he hasn't been in the lineup with any regularity for us to say whether he has that longevity as a player, so. But yes, I think we will see that as we go into next year.
So who are your top six at the top?
I mean, I do think that, PD and Hoglander just... I don't think we need to make hard and fast decisions, but it's working. And I think there's a huge... we talked about the mental game. Quinn loves playing with Philip Hronek, and that is such a mental boost. PD loves playing with Nils Hoglander. Suda seems to serve them well, so I think playing Miller better centered by Lindholm, and then whatever way you want to call it, first, second line, and Pedersen back in his natural center position, with Hoglander and Suda on his wings. I like that. I do. I love the lotto line, don't get me wrong, and we had so much fun. 2 weeks ago, we were talking about it just like it would never end. But all things have to end.
Well, the struggle with and again, back then, the struggle as the lotto line put together was more of we got to do something for PD. Whereas now the Vancouver Canucks have a lineup that they can do something with PD with.
Yeah. And I think Nils Hoglander's thriving, so...
and Niels was not the issue.
No, for sure not. But, he was... I don't know how Canucks, think that putting him on a line with two struggling wingers is just gonna magically turn it around for him. He's gonna be happier
PD's
playing...
got magic.
He does have that. And, I'm not saying he's not good enough to...
Maybe it's like 5D chess. You know what? If you're not going to re-sign with us, well, gosh darn it, we're going to make you miserable.
Yeah. And, respect to Ilya Mikheyev, but he's struggled since coming back from his injury. Not, long-term. He hasn't put it together. And, yeah. To me, I'm make PD happy and reward Nils Hoglander for his efforts and never break up that third line ever. That's my thoughts and feelings.
And whatever's left can play on the fourth line.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. That's pretty much it. The fourth line is kind of a land of broken toys, and maybe that's a problem.
Is a land of broken toys, or if we were to use the Christmas cartoon Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Island of Misfit Toys?
I think that's what I was probably thinking of. Okay. I've just got I haven't seen Rudolph, and I just have heard the expression and misremembered it.
Wait, you haven't seen that old school, Rudolph?
No. It's stop animation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen images
Anna,
from it. Sorry.
Next holiday season, we have to remedy this. Okay, like I'm sorry.
Can we make it
this
into
unacceptable
a drinking game somehow?
Oh, probably.
Okay.
There's probably ways to do that. Anyhow, speaking of drinking games, if the Vancouver Canucks don't get me the triple dub like I had asked, I might start drinking again. Although I say again, I've never really started drinking. Like, I maybe have to start to do it again. Regardless, the point is, I want the triple dub. But we are at the point where at the end of the show, we start to plug all sorts of things like supporting us at C4 Discord, or not, yeah, C4Discord.com. It's where you can support us in the regards of a conversation. You can also support us by following us on all the social media platforms, either Twitter or X or whatever the heck you call it, at the C4 Podcast. We're on Threads at the Real C4 Podcast. And you can support us financially, which currently has been rebranded to Buy Anna a Computer, but that's support.c4podcast.com. And that allows you to kick a few bucks our way, support us on a monthly basis, or commit to the full year with an annual contribution, which is actually slightly less than if you were to do it for 12 months at the monthly rate. But Anna, got any final words you wish to share with everyone this week?
So we didn't have an F word section, which was like a nice relief, but I will do a quick F word, and that is F all the racists on Twitter. Friend of the show, Satya Shah, like posted a response he got when he was calling out very legitimately the dumb Morgan Riley response to the empty net goal, because it was taken as a slap shot, and he took exception to that. And the amount of hate he got back, which was largely like racially motivated, just horrible. So just get the hell out of here. We really just hate to see all of that, and couldn't be a nicer guy, so sorry you have to deal with that, Sat, and get out of here, bigots, please.
Anyone who thought, Sat was wrong, which he isn't, the discipline will be more than 5 games because Riley's got an in-person hearing.
Yeah.
So what Riley did was wrong on all sorts of different levels, and you doing what you're doing makes that far less an issue.
Yeah.
Stop being an idiot. Final words of wisdom for me. Don't drink open liquids near electronics.
Thanks. Good advice.
You're welcome. So on behalf of myself, Chris at Lightforce, Anna at E4603, signing off, the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast with We Out.